Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we cut through all the noise and give you the essential knowledge you need, and fast.
Mm.
You, the learner, sent us a whole stack of material on a topic that is, well, it's absolutely critical, but often ignored until it's way too late. Vehicle roadworthiness.
It sounds so technical, doesn't it? Like it's just about compliance. But this is a vital topic.
Right.
We're really not just talking about car maintenance here. We're analyzing the difference between a safe, routine trip and being caught totally unprepared in a really dangerous or legally compromised situation.
That's exactly it. So our mission today is to give you that shortcut, to really understand what roadworthy actually means, why it's so important, both legally and personally, and, how you can stay safe and compliant behind the wheel.
And the core definition we pulled from all the materials you sent is really the foundation here. A roadworthy vehicle has to meet these essential safety standards. It does so much more than just run. It's basically a safety envelope. It protects the driver, your passengers, and really everyone else on the road.
We're talking brakes, lights, tires.
The big ones. Properly functioning brakes, clear lights, secure steering, and safe tires. All of it.
Okay, let's unpack this, and I think we should start with the why behind all the rules. Because if this were just about regulations, I think most people would just ignore it. This is about real-world consequence.
That's the key. When you start to look at why roadworthiness is necessary, it stops being this bureaucratic hurdle, and it becomes about three crucial things.
Right.
Safety, legality, and just operational effectiveness.
And your research pointed to 7 core reasons.
7 pillars, yeah. 7 reasons why this matters so deeply.
Okay, let's dive into those. Starting with the most immediate, the most visceral one, safety.
Safety is absolutely non-negotiable. I mean, a roadworthy vehicle directly minimizes your risk of an accident. We rely on those 4 critical components we mentioned, brakes, tires, steering, and suspension, to work perfectly every single time.
And if they don't?
If your suspension is shot, you lose stability. If your tires are bald, you hydroplane on the wet. If any one of those systems fails, even just a little, your margin for error in an emergency just drops to 0.
And because that margin is so tiny, the government has to step in, which I guess brings us to legal compliance.
Exactly. In so many jurisdictions, like, say, the UK with its annual MOT tests, these periodic inspections are mandatory.
If you skip them?
You're immediately facing fines, penalties, and in some cases, you could even have your vehicle restricted from use.
Okay, there's also a financial incentive here, right? Operational efficiency.
Yes, a big one. Vehicles that are properly maintained, that are certified roadworthy, they are, at a fundamental level, just more reliable machines. And that translates directly into better fuel efficiency.
Because the engine isn't fighting itself?
It's not fighting dirty filters or seized parts. It's just cheaper to run a well-cared-for car. Simple as that.
Saving money on gas is a clear benefit. But here's the one that I think causes the biggest shock. Insurance requirements. I've seen this buried deep in the fine print of so many policies.
Oh, this point cannot be overstated. When you buy insurance, you are implicitly agreeing that your vehicle is maintained to all the legal safety standards.
Right.
So if you get into a collision and an investigator finds out your vehicle was unroadworthy, maybe because of those bald tires or faulty brakes, the insurer has grounds to just void your policy.
So you cause an accident, you think you're covered, and then suddenly, because this is some worn-out part you ignored, you are personally liable for, what, hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Potentially. It turns a vehicle problem into a personal catastrophe.
Wow.
And moving beyond just the individual, we see public confidence. This is about the collective trust we all have when we're sharing the road. These mandatory checks ensure that the vast majority of vehicles meet some kind of minimum safety standard. It allows commerce, daily life, all of it, to proceed safely.
I wonder if people really think about that consciously, though. Like, oh, I trust that other car because it passed its inspections. It's probably more subconscious.
Maybe. But the data on accident reduction from these inspection schemes, it really speaks for itself. And that also ties into the environmental impact.
Emissions.
Right. Roadworthy vehicles, ones that have passed their emissions checks, they just have lower pollution outputs. It contributes significantly to better air quality, especially in cities.
And the last one, for anyone who buys and sells cars, resale value.
Of course. A well-maintained, certified, roadworthy vehicle with a clear history of passing these tests. It's going to command a much higher resale value. Buyers want proof they aren't inheriting a bunch of dangerous, expensive problems.
So, to wrap this first part up, maintaining roadworthiness keeps you safe, It limits your liability, it saves you money, and it helps the planet.
Okay, let's get into the legal reality of this. How often do you actually need an inspection?
This is where it gets tricky because the biggest issue is variability. It really depends on your local jurisdiction, the age of your vehicle, what you use it for. There's just no single global standard.
But there must be a common thread, a general guideline we found.
The general guideline in many places is an annual inspection, particularly once a car is, say, 3 to 5 years old. Brand new cars often get a bit of a grace period.
And that can be accelerated.
Oh, definitely. For high mileage vehicles, commercial vehicles, cars used for ride sharing, they're often on a much stricter schedule.
But it's not just the annual checkups. There are also specific triggers.
Exactly. The really crucial moments are those triggered events. You'll need an inspection after a major accident, or after a significant modification like an engine swap or major suspension work, or, and this is the big one for most people, when the vehicle changes hands. Which leads us to the big legal red flag. Is it legal to drive without a valid roadworthy certificate?
In any place where that certificate is mandatory, the answer is a clear, categorical no. It's your proof that at one point in time, your vehicle met that minimum safety threshold. Driving without it is, by definition, illegal operation.
Okay, so let's be super specific for the learner. When is that certificate an absolute must-have?
4 key moments.
Bruh.
First, when you're selling it, the seller has to provide it to the buyer. Second, when you re-register it, so think imported cars or cars that have been off the road for a while.
Okay.
Third, when you're converting a vehicle from, say, salvage or unfit status back to roadworthy. And finally, during random police checks or roadblocks where they're verifying safety compliance.
You pointed out a key distinction, though. For just daily driving, if your car is already registered, you don't need to carry the certificate with you, but the car itself must still be roadworthy.
That's the subtlety. You have to maintain the standard at all times. The certificate is just the paperwork you need at those trigger points.
And the consequences for not complying?
They're genuinely severe. Beyond just the immediate fine, which you'll almost certainly get, the financial hit can spiral really fast.
How so?
Well, law enforcement can issue substantial fines, but in more extreme cases, they can actually impound the vehicle. Just take it off the road until it's fixed and certified.
And I imagine these systems are all interconnected now. You can't just drive a dangerous car and hope to register it somewhere else to get around the rules.
Not anymore, no. In most regulated environments, registration delays or even cancellation are common if an inspection is failed or overdue. Jurisdictions talk to each other now to prevent dangerous cars from just hopping over a state line.
And then there's the ultimate risk, that insurance voiding we already talked about.
Exactly. You could lose your car, face fines, lose your insurance protection, all for ignoring a safety issue. It's a huge gamble.
So we know the rules. Let's visualize this. Your car's up on the lift. What is on the inspector's comprehensive hit list? What are they looking for?
It's an exhaustive checklist, really, designed to find any foreseeable safety failure. They usually break the car down into functional groups. Let's start with the things that make it stop and go straight.
Brakes. Has to be brakes.
Of course. They check the entire system. And this is way more than just looking at the pads and discs for wear. They check the drums, the lines, the hoses, looking for cracks or leaks in the hydraulic system.
Because a leak is catastrophic.
It means sudden, total braking failure. So they check the fluid level, the system integrity under pressure, everything.
What about the things that let you see and be seen? Lights.
It's the functionality and alignment of every single lamp. Headlights, high beams, brake lights, turn signals, hazard lights. Even the tiny bulb that lights up your license plate. If your plate can't be read at night, that's a failure.
Then the 4 little patches of rubber connecting you to the road. The tires.
So critical, because they're constantly wearing down. Inspectors are checking tread depth, obviously, but also for any cuts, bulges in the sidewall, things that signal internal damage and a risk of a blowout.
And they check for uneven wear, right? That can signal other problems.
Yes, exactly. If your tires are wearing heavily just on one side, that points to an immediate alignment or a suspension problem that has to be fixed.
Speaking of that, let's talk steering and suspension.
They check every joint and bushing for wear. They look for excessive play in the steering wheel. That amount you can turn it before the wheels actually start to move. They check shock absorbers for leaks. Any looseness in the steering linkage is a massive safety hazard.
Sounds like they're checking the car's skeleton. What about inside?
Inside, it's about occupant protection. So seatbelts, the webbing can't be frayed, and the locking mechanism has to engage instantly when you yank it hard. And they make sure the seats themselves are securely bolted down.
And finally, the body invisibility.
Structural integrity. They're looking for significant rust, especially in load-bearing areas of the frame. And for visibility, they're checking the windshield for any cracks that might obstruct your view and making sure the wipers actually work effectively.
Okay, let's do a dedicated deep dive on one session that I think confuses a lot of people. Emissions testing. This isn't really about mechanical safety, so why is it part of a roadworthiness
Yeah,
test?
because roadworthiness has become more holistic.
Hmm.
It now includes environmental safety. Emissions testing is crucial for complying with air quality regulations. Your vehicle, if it's running poorly, can pump out excessive amounts of carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, things that contribute to smog and health problems.
So how do they actually test for that?
It's highly technical. They'll either use a gas analyzer probe that they stick right in the exhaust pipe, or they'll use an onboard diagnostics tool, an OBD tool, that connects directly to your car's computer.
Ah, the OBD test. So the car's computer is basically tattling on itself.
In a way, yes. The computer tells the inspector if all the pollution control devices like your catalytic converter and your oxygen sensors are all working within their specified ranges.
And if a car fails that test, what are the usual suspects?
It's often a faulty or even a missing catalytic converter, or maybe an engine misfire, which means fuel isn't burning cleanly. Sometimes it's as simple as a bad oxygen sensor throwing the whole fuel-air mixture off.
So for the learner, what's a good tip to prepare other than just making sure the check engine light is off?
Well, besides fixing any warning lights immediately, the best thing you can do is make sure the engine is fully warmed up before the test.
Why is that?
A cold engine runs rich, which can produce higher emissions. Our materials suggest a good 10 or 20-minute drive right before the test gets everything, especially the catalytic converter, up to its proper operating temperature.
Preparation is definitely key. But let's move to the bad news. What happens if you fail? You've done the prep, you've paid the fee, and you still get a failure notice.
A failure means you haven't met the minimum standards. So first, you get a detailed rejection report. And this isn't vague. It lists every single defect-worn brake pads, incorrect headlight aim, maybe a faulty gas cap.
And that report is your to-do list, basically.
It's your mandatory to-do list. And you usually have a limited time, often 7 to 14 days, to get all those repairs done and come back for a retest.
Which is often cheaper if you're within that window.
Right. It's often free or heavily discounted.
Hmm.
But until you pass, that vehicle is uncertified. It can't be legally registered, sold, or renewed. Driving it is illegal.
This just makes the case for doing your own proactive self-checks even stronger. We shouldn't just wait for the annual inspection. What are some practical things you can do yourself?
You have to get into a maintenance mindset. Start with a simple walk-around, check all your lights and signals, then move on to sensory checks.
What do you mean by that?
Use your senses. For the brakes, how do they feel? Are they responsive? Are they firm? Listen for any squealing or grinding. If the pedal feels spongy, that's a huge red flag for a hydraulic issue.
And tires again.
Yes. Check the pressure with a gauge, look for weird wear patterns, feel the sidewall for any bubbles or cuts, and then just take a short test drive and listen. Listen for clunks from the suspension or whining from the steering.
And check for excessive play in the steering wheel.
Absolutely. And, of course, keep good maintenance records. Spotting a problem early in the paperwork can save you from a catastrophic failure down the road.
We also have to talk about modifications, because this is where so many enthusiasts get into trouble, often completely by accident. Can modifying your car really compromise its roadworthiness?
It absolutely can, and it often does.
Yeah.
See, roadworthiness is tied to the vehicle operating safely according to its certified design. Any modification that changes its original performance can compromise that certification.
What are some classic examples of mods that cause failures?
Changing the suspension height dramatically affects handling and even your headlight alignment. Putting on massive, non-standard wheels can mess with your braking effectiveness.
What about just tuning the engine for more power?
Tuning the engine or tampering with the exhaust can immediately make you fail an emissions test. And any change that bypasses safety features, like removing airbags or the catalytic converter, is a guaranteed failure and, frankly, often illegal.
The advice seems clear. If you're going to modify, talk to an expert first to make sure you stay compliant.
Compliance is always cheaper than liability.
So if you're driving right now and you suspect your vehicle isn't roadworthy, the brakes feel sluggish, the steering is vague, what is the immediate, crucial first step?
Stop driving immediately. If there are serious safety concerns like a spongy brake pedal or loud grinding, just pull over safely. Don't try to limp it to a mechanic if you think a failure is imminent. Call for a tow. your safety has to override convenience.
This has been a really necessary deep dive. We've established that roadworthiness is this holistic concept covering safety, legality, insurance, the whole 9 yards. We've walked through the checklist, the laws, and the serious consequences of ignoring it all.
The key takeaway for you, the learner, is that this isn't just a defensive strategy to avoid fines. It's really an investment in the safety and reliability of this complex machine you depend on every day. Being proactive about it is just being smart about your security and your finances.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought. Roadworthiness relies so heavily on a professional stamp of approval, especially when a certificate is required to sell a car. But how deeply should the learner really trust the maintenance records of a used vehicle, knowing that the certificate is only as reliable as the inspector who issued it and the seller who provided it?
So we challenge you to explore how different jurisdictions enforce the transparency of a vehicle's history when that roadworthy certificate changes hands. Is the system really designed for safety, or is it just designed for compliance?
Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.